What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday was a pretty good day. A lot of stuff happened. We had Halo Reach releasing on PC, which was really cool because I picked it up and I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's very smooth on the PC. Now, even on lesser hardware, it runs pretty well. Also, definitely better than it did, I guess, even back on the 360 days now. And yes, Resident Evil 3 appears to have been confirmed by Sony. So, thanks, Sony. I'm sure Capcom is very happy with you. We're going to go over that here. And then it looks like the Switch is getting a big RPG series heading over. One we've been talking about, actually, for like the past year and a half. It looks like it is heading over, and that's Trails of Cold Steel, and people are going to be pretty excited to see that happening. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit the like button. It does help out, and get subscribed so you can stay updated on the gaming news going on in the gaming world. We're going to start today with PlayStation, because they did have their PlayStation 25th anniversary awards show yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. On Twitter, people were sharing memories of the PlayStation. Oh, it was their first system. Oh, I remember the PlayStation 2 being, my first DVD player, for example, or I remember something like Grand Theft Auto 3 when that first came out. It blew my mind. A lot of really fun announcements that were going on around just the awards show. People, different games winning awards and all of that. Nothing too groundbreaking when it comes to like new announcements really at all, but they did talk about how they are being entered into the Guinness Book of World Records for the best-selling brand of a home console, and that, of course, is just PlayStation in general. It was weird to see them use VG charts as their source, but they did take a full picture and everything here, and they marked somewhere around 450 million units. That's between, of course, the original console's launch in Japan on December 3rd, 1994, all the way up to November 7th of 2019. So it includes all 4 generations, obviously, thrown in there. VG Charts is a weird one to use as a source because they do estimate numbers around like current times. They do go back and catalog like historic numbers, but I think they still have to estimate some. And VG Charts usually is kind of looked at as like, okay, well, we'll take that with a grain of salt. But here's Guinness and Sony just taking it straight up and using it as a world record source. But hey, there you go. I don't think anyone's like, oh wait, we got to double check the PlayStation for this. No, they've had over 3 generations of over 100 million and one of like 85 million. I think it's pretty safe to say that they are probably leading on home console brand. Also, we found out when Persona 5 The Royal is coming west. That is March 31st, and this is exciting, of course, for anyone who has not played Persona 5 yet. Looks like a good pickup, or just fans in general. Of course, they've been waiting to hear when it would be released and available in the West. And we did find out that there will be a special edition, and then even the regular edition appears to have kind of a steelbook case. So let's go over those now. Here is the special edition that you're seeing in front of you. This is the Persona 5 The Royal Phantom Thieves Edition. Has the Joker mask with the stand, so you'll be able to kind of display that really well. The steelbook, a soundtrack, the collector's box, art book, and a dynamic PlayStation 4 theme. Again, March 31st, as you see there, and that is going to be retailing for $89.99, so $90. And then we also have the steelbook that you can see there that will be available again on launch day, March 31st, and that is the launch edition, which includes a limited edition steelbook case and a dynamic theme download. Good stuff there. Again, for anyone who's been waiting for this, you don't have to wait too much longer. There was a concern that it wouldn't be ready until like the end of 2020 or something, whereas it looks like it's only going to be, what, 4 months? A little under 4 months then that we have to wait to pick this one up. But exciting stuff there for Persona fans or people who maybe want to jump into it and have been waiting to hear about this because, of course, this is going to have a bunch of extra content to check out. Also, we know Nier has become much more popular since Nier Automata had released, and it's been pretty good for that series so far since then. But before that game, there was an original Nier that I think a lot of people forgot about because of all the hype around the most recent one, which is a very good game. Most people should try it. I would say at least pick it up and play it. It was on sale, I think, for like $20 during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. See if that sale's still on, because it's definitely worth the money. But it looks like Square might be getting ready for another announcement, as they have unveiled a 10th anniversary website that would make sense in April of 2020, as the original Nier came out back in 2010, April, on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and I remember getting it on the Xbox 360, I believe, and playing through it. It was on both, and I think I rented one of them, and it was okay. I think the most recent Nier is like very good. That one I wasn't as sold on, but it does have a cult following, and to see that the series is very healthy right now leads me to believe that we could see Square getting ready for some sort of announcement over a remaster, a remake, or just a full-on next game in the series. Either way, it's exciting stuff, and I would look forward to some news maybe coming up soon. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with the Resident Evil remake rumor for Resident Evil 3 specifically. We had talked about this a little while ago, how we had the rumor break that it was getting ready. It seemed to be ready for next year, right? Like I was going over it, I said, I think it could be a Game Awards announcement of some kind, and that would, I think, make sense if it is a 2020 release, and it's kind of looking like that might be the case. Mostly because Sony decided, for whatever reason, off of the PlayStation Network, to leak a bunch of images. Specifically, it looks like almost like box art or title art, like basically the stuff you would see if you went into the storefront and bam, there's Resident Evil 3 Remake. Here's a bunch of them, and you can see right away, we have Jill, there's Carlos, and yes, Nemesis in the background. Now, they did change up Jill's outfit. I think it makes sense. They, of course, are using actors and actresses for these different character models, so I think that outfit makes a bit more sense for what they're doing here, but the big thing has been about Nemesis and how he looks. He has a nose now, which is interesting, and his teeth are very large. They're very exposed. Now, I do believe that when Nemesis is in motion and he's all over the place and he's got a rocket launcher, he's probably gonna be terrifying, I would say, yes. And visually, so far from what we're seeing from these title cards, this game is looking pretty good. I think it's going to be, again, on that same level as Resident Evil 2, and that game looks phenomenal. So I'm very excited about Resident Evil 3. Like I said, we had already talked about it previously, but to now see it, right? Like right there, title cards and all, the Video Game Awards, or the Game Awards, I should say, it seems likely, right? I mean, this stuff's all been uploaded to the PlayStation Store and leaking out, of course, because Sony does this a lot. This is me. I see this a lot with Sony. But to see it in front of us, and now we're thinking Game Awards, I think that makes sense. But what if it was sooner? Now, I say that because Daniel Ahmed tweeted this out, as you're seeing here, saying, what if the game was revealed before the Game Awards at a different event? Nah, I'm just kidding, unless... Now I'm starting to think that there might be something else lined up. Maybe for Capcom to have their own live stream, or maybe Sony has something lined up like a state of play. That also crossed my mind. Now, of course, the Game Awards is towards the end of next week. I believe it's next Thursday. So yeah, there's still time between today and then to have like a state of play thrown in there, and maybe that's the last thing they end with, which is Resident Evil 3 Remake is happening, and maybe there'll be more information at the Game Awards or whenever Capcom wants to announce it. That could be, but to see what, I mean, at this point, it's pretty concrete that Resident Evil 3 is getting remade. When? Maybe 2020, maybe the reveal is coming that much sooner. Maybe we'll know about it before the Game Awards, like in terms of a trailer and a full announcement. We'll see. Next up, let's talk about The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3, because it is coming to the Switch. GameSpot had a full article and write-up on this. They had the scoop, and it is an interesting situation to see unfold. Because you remember, Falcom, they were kind of stubborn about this whole situation, and it seemed that NIS, or Nippon Ichi Software, was really pushing them to do things like move over Ys, for example, Ys 8, right? It seemed like they had pushed them quite a bit to make this happen, and now it seems that Falcom is kind of admitting that the Western crowd is moving to the Switch, specifically ones that enjoy things like turn-based or strategy RPGs. So now here they come with Trails of Cold Steel 3, not 1 or 2. It appears that 1 and 2 have a bit more to figure out with publishing, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I believe that has a few other companies kind of in the mix. I think Marvelous is in there. I think Xseed was in there. It's not just like NIS and Falcom. There seems to be companies in there that could hold things up, but 3 at least is coming over, and like I said, GameSpot talked about it, and we had a full trailer that you can see some of here, and this game is actually releasing spring 2020 in the West, and the Japan launch is going to come sometime after that. They are focusing on the Western crowd with a JRPG over the crowd in Japan first. That is an interesting thing to see there, by the way, but we have heard that different things like Disgaea, for example, have actually sold better in the West than it did in Japan with some of their Switch releases, so it kind of makes sense in that regard. Now, they're also going to have like a couple of different editions as well that include things like a 20-page art book, which is pretty cool to see, in reversible cover art. Now, it's going to run at 720p docked and undocked, straight up, 30 frames per second, and these are longer games, but the thing that's a little strange to me is you do kind of have to play the first two, from what I've gathered, to understand what's going on in the third one. Now, I'm sure they'll have some kind of summary or a way that you can grasp some of the story, just starting off with the third one, but I do feel like people are going to miss some of the first, like some of the story, just because the first two just aren't there. Although I guess you could have played it on other platforms, then, oh, I wanted to get on the Switch. There you go. Especially if you were someone who played the series a lot on the Vita, and that's something that Falcom has lost. They lost the Vita. It's gone. I mean, Sony's not doing handheld stuff, which we'll talk about soon, by the way. So they had to make a choice. They still want their console version with something like the PlayStation 4, right? But they also want to have the ability to have a handheld, even though it's a hybrid now, a handheld variant of their game. So it looks like going forward, PlayStation 4 and Switch seems to be their combination right now. And of course, the fourth one, I believe, is out. And now we're seeing when that possibly makes the jump west as well. Maybe that'll come out on both systems straight up at the same time then. Next up, let's talk a little bit about VR, because we've heard, of course, Phil Spencer saying things like VR, no one wants it, it's not that popular. However, something interesting has happened. It appears that Oculus headsets like the Quest and the Go and the Rift S have actually sold very, very well over Black Friday and Cyber Monday weekend. They've sold out, it seems, on Amazon, and the best way to get it at this time is to wait weeks and weeks to get it. Now, this was covered by Upload VR, as you're seeing. They had a full write-up on this, and it looks like possibly Oculus might have something here with some of their all-in-one devices. Now, the Rift S, of course, is a headset that you would plug into your PC, but the Quest appears to be fairly popular, even though it's not like glamorized or anything. Like, you don't really see a ton of talk, at least I don't, about the Quest. But I think that all-in-one interface is very, very interesting to people, considering you don't need any type of PC or game console to play this thing. You don't have a cell phone. Remember, that was the thing with the Samsung, Gear VR. You still needed to put your cell phone in there, so if you get a call, well, it kind of ruins everything. But to hear that VR is actually doing kind of well at this point over the holidays is pretty good, although I guess that would be the time people would buy VR headsets, is for other people, not necessarily themselves. Still, though, to see that we have some success here for VR headsets, especially after Phil Spencer's like, no one really wants it. I think he's still correct that it's a smaller audience now, like a niche audience. It appears to be growing, especially the all-in-one headset crowd. So maybe we'll see Sony tackle that at some point, where they have a headset that's just all-in-one. Hard to say there, but I think Sony is making the right move, at least, by going with the PlayStation VR 2, which is probably going to be unveiled, like I said, alongside the PS5. And in our last bit of news, what's probably not shocking, we have pretty much crystal clear confirmation that Sony wants no part of the handheld business anymore. Actually, if you really think about it, Nintendo's not really doing the handheld business much anymore. Sure, they're still selling their 3DS, and I guess you could say the Switch Lite is just a handheld, right? But it's part of the Switch umbrella, underneath the Switch umbrella, so that's still technically considered their home console brand as well. That's where it gets kind of confusing. The 3DS, though, is their dedicated handheld device, and they've pretty much forgotten about that. So would Sony really jump back into the handheld race? Well, Jim Ryan decided to stomp out any ideas or thoughts around that. PlayStation Vita was brilliant in many ways, and the actual gaming experience was great, but clearly it's a business that we're no longer in now. And that is Jim Ryan, of course, who's taken over for PlayStation and Sony and rolling into the PlayStation 5 era, wanting no part of any type of Vita successor, just nothing. And you know what? That's probably a good idea. I don't think Sony has the, I would say the studios to make that work between multiple systems like that, where you got to focus on your handheld and you got to focus on your home console. And wait a minute, the home console's taken off. We're going to forget about the handheld now. That is That's kind of what happened with the Vita and the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 took off as well as it did, and Sony, I think rightfully, diverted resources away from the Vita and was full speed ahead on the PlayStation 4, which is a shame because I do like the Vita. I do. It's a shame that that is the last thing that it seems like anyway, handheld-wise, that Sony will be doing for probably ever, unless we get to a point where mobile chips are so powerful that they're really not that different and we hit that like a wall for like resolution and there's no point in getting like 18K or whatever. Maybe we get to a point where it's like, well, it might as well just be a hybrid anyway. But until then, years and years, maybe even decades from now, Sony is all about the home console, and that's probably a good thing. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one is from Proto Dad saying, wouldn't it be cool if VGA did an awards show for the generation? Imagine categories like Game of the Generation and Best New Developer of the Generation would be pretty sweet. Yeah, that would be interesting, mostly because we're kind of offset with generations now anyway. I think it'd be better if, as long as the Game Awards would stay around long enough, if we had like Game of the Decade or like the Game Awards show for the entire decade. So like the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s, that would make sense. And I say we're offset by generation because the Switch and the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox technically don't line up now, right? It's a little fuzzy with that. I think better to go by blocks of years, and that would be really cool. But then it also comes down to organizing it and getting all of the nominations, and the massive pool of games to pick from might get a little crazy, and that would be one of the most controversial game shows ever. Like, ever. It'd probably be one of the hardest to organize as well, but it also might end up being one of the most viewed because there are so many possibilities for what could win Game of the Decade is what we'll say, right? The Game Awards show featuring Game of the Decade or something like that. That would be fun, and they could have a bunch of categories and of course game reveals, but if they want to tackle that, that's up to them. I would definitely watch that though. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys. Hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's that Resident Evil 3 leak that appears to be pretty much confirming that rumor that we put out the other day. What do you think about Resident Evil 3 Remake possibly getting announced before the Game Awards, at the Game Awards? Go ahead and make that prediction down below where you think that's going to happen. And then what about Trails of Cold Steel 3 coming over to the Switch? Do you want to see the other two come over as well? Are you happy to see this happen? Let me know about that down below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.